Hi, everyone, and welcome to In Deep Geek Live. Welcome to the Westworld pre-show, episode 2. As always, I've got Hax Dogma with me just to start with, and I've got an extra special guest along with us today. So why don't I start by letting these fine gentlemen introduce themselves. Let's go, first of all, with Axel. Do you want to say hi?
Hey, everybody. I hope everyone's safe out there. Robert and Hax, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to see you both. And Hax, I love that you have shown everyone your face this season because you are so handsome.
Oh, thanks, man.
Come to the camera and give you a hug. I am, of course, from the Westworld Theory Cast. You can check us out at dvrpodcast.com. We are covering Westworld 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm on Monday with Ken. Wednesday is Jenny and Brett and I. Friday, we got the cleanup techs, Tim, Gina, and Andy. And we're just watching both of your guys' videos and soaking it all in and having an amazing time. So thanks for having me.
An absolute delight, as always. Just to say that there are links down in the description to both the podcast and to Hax's channel. For those who do not know, Hax Dogma. Hax, do you want to say hi?
Hey, everybody. Hax Dogma here. Cover Westworld and a variety of other shows on YouTube here. You can find me at Hax Dogma. Also Twitter, and we also have a Discord community that's growing pretty quickly. So any of those, reach out and say hey.
Excellent. The way that we're going to run this one is we're going to start probably the first half roughly of the pre-show. We're going to be looking back at episode 1. We're just going to try and draw out a few things that perhaps you didn't spot in that. And then the second half, we're going to be looking forward to episode 2. We've got a trailer, and obviously we can pick into what has been happening already in season 3, just to see where these trails might go and try and come up with a few predictions about what might happen. But why don't we start, Hax, why don't you go first? Was there anything in particular that struck you about episode 1? Did you enjoy it to start with?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. Yeah, I love this first episode. I think I've already seen some people online complaining about it, but I have no idea what the video talks about because I didn't watch it. I mean, what I saw in this first episode was exactly what we could have been expecting. I mean, assuming it's the real world, and yeah, Dolores is out, Bernard's out. They're each taking very drastically different approaches in their host lives outside of the park. And yeah, Dolores is out, Bernard's out. They're each taking somehow hearing reverb. I loved it. It's great first episode.
Awesome. And how about you, Axel? Any particular thoughts about episode 1?
That might have been me opening a browser window. I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem.
I was so confused.
I loved it. There was, as you had alluded to, there was a little bit of backlash and a little bit of concern in the off season too, when Jonah and Lisa Joy said, it's going to be a little bit more easy to understand, a little straighter narrative. And I was a little worried about it, but they're so intelligent, they can't help but be intelligent. And the show is still just as awesome. And yeah, you're not immediately asking like, is that Bernard? Is that, what's happening on a beach? You're so confused like season 2. It has more of like a Michael Mann Heat feel to it. It's a little bit more stylized. We're out of the park. I sunk right into it. I felt that there was just as much to analyze and theorize about. And yet they've been able to add someone like Aaron Paul, more character development. I felt that investing so much time in him and his best friend and the fake therapy thing that it's not, he was fake, but it was therapy.
Yeah.
I thought it was extremely meaningful because if you're going to have a show about human consciousness, we've got to get into the emotional part. That's what we are. We're emotional creatures. So I love this episode. I thought it looked like it cost $5 billion. Like I heard it was one of the most expensive seasons of television ever. And it shows. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that completely. I loved this. For me, it felt like there was a whole load more world building in a way that we didn't have since episode 1 of season 1. Season 2, they'd established the world and they were just charging ahead with it. This time, we're in the outside world. And so the bits that I loved the most were the bits when we were seeing the world largely through Caleb's eyes. When he had his app, you see him going through work. We see what the universe around him is like. And that, for me, was what really worked. It has this feel of being futuristic, but still just believably close to us, almost as if we could kind of reach out and touch it. All the bits of technology were things we went, yeah, I could see that happening. That's not too far away. That's what really worked for me. Let's start with just again thinking about episode 1. Let's think about timelines first, because this is something they did in both seasons 1 and 2. There was a lot of playing around with timelines, trying to confuse us, trying to make us go, is that different? It did seem this episode as if everything was roughly on the same timeline, as in we're talking 3 months or so after the events at the end of season 2. So there was that the intro scene, obviously, when we get Dolores going round to that guy's house. That was a little bit earlier, but certainly we had time checks with both Bernard and, of course, over when we had Charlotte Hale. She had a time check there of 3 months. Do you think, and Hax, I'll go with you this first, I know you have another theory that I want to talk about in just one moment, but just on the face of it, are we looking at things happening at roughly the same time in this episode?
I definitely think so. I think that there could be a case made that, such as like Dolores going after the guy at the very beginning of the episode. We don't really have a time for that. That could really happen whenever, and I could see like that, because I think they have to tell us the story directly after Bernard and Dolores leave Arnold's house and kind of go their opposite paths. I think they need to fill in the blanks between this 3-month time gap and what we saw at the end of season 2. So I think that there could be a claim made that like they're maybe telling the story of Dolores, like learning about Rehoboam more and more, or at face value, like I think we equally got, she infiltrated she found this data somehow. She then used the data to get close to Liam, and then caught up, single storyline. So I could see it either way, but I definitely think that they at least probably will visit directly after at some point.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So we have our working assumption is that first scene was relatively soon after she's out in the real world. She's figured out what's going on, needing to understand how to get to insight and all the rest of it. She gets the information she wants there. That leads her over to Liam, and then after that, we pick up with her when she's apparently dating him. So that seems roughly on the face. Is there anything in terms of Axel? Is there anything that made you, looking at that first episode, made you think that they're pulling the wool over our eyes in some way here? Is there something that made you slightly suspicious?
Not really. I mean, I think I picked up on the Dolores, the opening kind of set piece being earlier, pretty quickly after. And then, as you stated, they made a definitive effort in both Bernard and the Dolores timeline and Hale, like you're saying, sitting at the table, to show that we're at the same time. I think that these are purposeful from a narrative perspective, and also in introducing this new season to say, hey, we want to show you this is where you're at. You can feel comfortable with these landmarks. But being that it is Westworld, I like the way you said, is there anything that you thought was kind of, like just didn't feel? And I mean, obviously there is, and I know you all, and I think we're going to talk about the kind of simulation theory or something being a little bit off. There is the Maeve part, right? Which, when does that happen?
Yeah.
And I'm still unsure of that, because it seems to me that perhaps we're seeing Maeve, it is concurrent. She's waking up and then Bernard is going to interact with her. Or maybe Bernard woke her up already. That's the kind of question. Is the Maeve part a little farther forward, and we have to circle back around to see how Bernard gets us there? But other than that, I think everything is pretty much as it seems.
Yeah, that's you know, the Bernard angle. Like, I was thinking, I forget exactly what you said, but something made me look back, and I'm looking at the episode now, and he's run that diagnostic 342 times. Assuming he's done it once a day, we actually already have proof that it's, well, you know, proof that it's possibly a year in the future, right? You know, again, assuming that he does it once a day, he's done it 342 times. You know, that might be something there. And equally with Maeve, the only thing that we have to really determine is 3 months enough to rebuild the park and then have guests visit again.
And that goes back to the Hale meeting that she had, right, Hax? I think
definitely
for Bernard, I think there was a newspaper article there, but we don't know that that's the day of the art, like you're saying, you know, so it's potentially could be further along the line. And I think that's that's like the kind of time demarcation that we should be concerned with, is how quick can the park get up and running to the point that or is Maeve involved in a simulation or a practice?
Yeah, I was going to say it could be just be practice.
Yeah. I mean, my take, and this is sort of going ahead a little to episode 2 when we're talking about Maeve, but my take, based purely on about the 2 seconds we got in the trailer when she did everybody freeze all motor functions kind of thing, everybody there froze and she walked through them. Now, what that tells me is that everybody there were hosts.
No doubt.
So that seems to me that what you would do instinctively if you were running the parks and you're saying, okay, so let's say Maeve was rescued. This is what we got the hints of at the end of season 2. She was rescued and she was put into a different park, because you wouldn't just start up Westworld again. That even for Delos, I think that's a little bit too much. So they take those hosts that they salvage and they put them into a new park. And so my guess is that is them doing little trials of this new park.
Yeah.
So go on.
Yeah, she. So I actually haven't seen the trailer. She does a freeze all motor functions everyone stops.
Well, we don't see her do it, but she you know, she looks out of that square, and then in the trailer she walks through the square and everybody else is frozen.
Seems like Felix and Sylvester probably set her back up and, you know, hoping that she would like play it cool, and then because I have to imagine everyone's got to be on edge. You know, everyone's got to be looking very closely at these hosts. So if she's just like so quickly to freeze all motor functions and then walk through the crowd as the only host defying, you know, her code, I think that's gonna maybe raise some red flags that Felix and Sylvester are kicking themselves for being a part of.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting slightly ahead of ourselves thinking about next episode now, so I'm gonna pull us back to episode 1. Now, first of all, actually, we had a super chat just before we went live, which was Maura Lee saying, just a show of love and support for all the excellent Westworld content. Thank you to Robert and all your fabulous guests. Thank you, Maura. You know how much I appreciate that. But can we go back to episode 1 and think about Caleb for just one moment? Now, Caleb was in many ways, he was like the running heartbeat of episode 1. Do you think there's something going on there that we're not sure about? Now, I want to throw Axel to you. I've seen a couple of people querying in various places whether or not there was something going on when Caleb said, you know, somebody's already shot me in the head, and it looked like something appeared on his head. Do you think that something was actually going on there?
I don't think so. I looked at it. I love that this fandom dives in like that. You know, I'm one of those people, but I think that I think it's important what he said, but I don't think that there was like something that appeared on his head to give us an indication that this is not real or a simulation or something. But we've been talking on the Westworld Theory Cast. We all kind of felt that his meeting up with Dolores was not an accident. And based upon Rehoboam and the disturbances and the fluctuations, and Dolores perhaps being the thing that is gotten into the system, which remember when Liam Gallagher is approached and the woman says someone is infiltrated, they've gotten far enough to poke around, right? I think that's probably Dolores. She got the information from what's his name, Jerry, in the beginning. That was what he was putting his fingers on, the insight info, as your video talked about, Robert. I think that what we've been kind of talking about is maybe Caleb is a human host hybrid on the outside, that whereas Westworld was using the park and the information in the park to build this, Insight on the other side, a competing company, was using the flip idea and using this information through the chips and Rehoboam to build immortality. And he was shot in the head, and he was an experiment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. So he clearly has a backstory, and I really there's something going on here. His backstory, we get this in flashback with these. He was military of some kind. It's very vague, but he doesn't appear to be in like a proper military uniform. And he's there with his mates, or something seems to have gone wrong. So it's deliberately vague about what's going on in his background, particularly given that we've been sort of made to understand that there's no need for war anymore. Delos, this was one of the things that we sort of getting from last year and last season and this season, is this idea that, with all this wonderful technology, we don't need war anymore. So why are there guys running around in the military if that's the case? So yes, there seems to be something weird going on. My personal sort of slightly tinfoil theory is the fact that this Rico app he's got is also run by Insight and Rehoboam, because it just seems, I mean, they use it to start with. It's something which, it just goes by without sort of mentioning it, but they use this app. They are aware of it. They want to get all the information. And are they really in charge of managing every aspect of everyone's life except for that? I suspect not. Hax, I mean, feel free to pick up on either of those. Well, do you want to pick up on either of those points?
Yeah, with Caleb, like, I don't want Caleb to be a host. I know that, like, I think that what they showed us in episode 1 is they're building to this idea that all sci-fi shows are building towards is humans being deterministic. I actually just started watching Devs, which very, very good first few episodes. I recommend that as well. And they also are dealing with this idea of determinism. And I think that the importance of Caleb in this first episode and showing his, cyclical routine, and he wakes up exactly as Dolores wakes up, and it's to best show us, the audience, how determinism works and why it's not such a far-fetched to believe that we don't have free will, which is a huge thing to say, let alone prove to everybody as the premise of your show. And I think that what they're doing is showing, humans in their loops, and if he, is anything other than that human, I think that we'll lose some of that, and it won't translate as well when they do make the claim that the reason we can see the future is because we know everything that's going to happen since your conception, kind of thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
I was going to say, I just wanted to agree on the point that I hope Caleb is human, because otherwise we're just into this world of everybody's a host, and it's just I want this again, exactly, and I want this connection between Dolores and a human, because she has only met like the top 1% and Delos employees, and for her to actually meet somebody who's like real is for my money actually really important for the development of the narrative as a whole. So I hope that he's not secretly some sort of host. But Axel, sorry, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say that, I'm not wedded to this idea. I do see, someone in the chat said parallels don't equal the narrative, and that's true. And there's definitely, he's the new male lead, right? So what have our other male leads been? Teddy and William, kind of hostish. So, but that doesn't mean it. And I like what you're saying, Hax, that we're entering the human world. It's good to be centered on her having a relationship with a human that's positive, right? Because even her relationship with Ford wasn't positive. Remember, Maeve is Ford's favorite, not Dolores.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe what it kind of makes me think about is the parallels to this new company Insight and Delos, and what kind of relationship they had in the outside world as kind of competing companies, perhaps headed towards the same goal, but from different avenues. And like you said about Insight perhaps controlling the Rico app, I will say that maybe he's not a host, could be totally wrong about that, but I still find their meeting to be more than coincidental.
Oh, yeah.
And especially where he holds her just as Teddy did and just as William did, right? And there's those parallels that they're bringing up. And we know that their stories were not coincidental.
Yeah.
That we thought. So.
And all of that, leads to the fact that Dolores knows how to make people fall in love with her, right? Teddy, maybe a little programmed, right? But William, she had a genuine human connection 30 years ago in which we could make the claim that she's doing exactly, similarly what she did then now with Caleb. And the biggest thing for me about their meeting, and I talked about this in the simulation video, is this idea that she turned on her pain receptors. At the end of season 2, we see her eat bullets by William, and she learns from that second why machines are superior to human flesh. She's like, okay, I could just not feel it and advance. And so she has now rebuilt her body and has printed new hosts. We have to assume that she can change those attributes. So why is she printing a body and then leaving or has the pain receptors on?
Right. That she's able to be passed out in that.
Yeah. That she's able to play this victim that needs to be rescued. And again, the text, or what Martin says about the text, is that it's underpass on the east side, and he just happens to also meet her in an underpass. There's literal signs of consciousness on the wall. I mean, the writing is literally on the wall. Like, it's I don't know. I definitely think it's far too many variables to be coincidental. But I don't know who's pulling the strings there, and it could be Dolores. It could be Rehoboam.
She could already have control of Rehoboam for all we know.
Yeah.
Well, this comes to what I was wanting to ask Hax about, which is, so he did a video. I've not seen the video, but we all know Hax does fantastic videos. Sometimes a little bit out there, but more often than not right. This is a sort of a theory video that I will let you introduce, other than to say this is about whether this is a simulation within a simulation. Do you want to just give us a headline to what you mean by that?
Yeah, so essentially, this comes from the conversation that Dolores has with Liam and his friends, and the guy's like, hey, he's super drunk, and he's like, hey, this could be a simulation inside a simulation. And of course, that's, he's talking about himself and like the world around him. And it's meant to be a passing line. It's simply a joke, to poke fun at maybe the hardcore fans that would fall for this. But so as a thought experiment, we kind of just break down how it could be. And they already kind of show us how it could be. Because Rehoboam exists in this world, it leaves open the possibility that what we're seeing is simply either, someone controlling this machine and trying to figure out what needs to be done in order to advance their own goals. And, then we have to guess who the operator of that machine would be. I think a case could be made for Dolores, and then that introduces some timeline play. But I think more than likely what we're seeing is like possibly Surak trying to figure out how to stop Dolores, right? But again, like, I just think that we'll see this machine used, and this idea of like simulation omniscience, because if he can see the future, then he knows exactly what will happen for every single being, and how to adjust to then make sure his goals align. And how do you beat someone who knows your exact steps without some kind of tomfoolery happening here?
Yeah, and so this is building on what we've already seen in previous seasons, where they show us things that are happening inside the machine. So when Bernard went into the cradle and met Ford there, that's an example of things happening inside the machine. And we also have the sort of the created, the sublime, the sort of the heaven, for the digital heaven that Teddy and Akecheta and people went off into. So they have form on showing us the what's happening in the digital world in a sort of a very fictionalized, real way. So I like this idea that we might be seeing that. I don't think everything that we're seeing is that at all, but it's possible, as you say, it's possible that some of the thread of Dolores's timeline, we are seeing something along those lines.
Yeah.
Guys, just while I say, please do drop questions into the chat as we go along. I'll try and pick out as many as I can do as we go through it. And obviously I'll answer any super chats as they come up. We've got one from Louise Brooks. Thank you so much, Louise. I appreciate it. Saying, when Bernard was doing self-check and he asked, "Would you lie?" Didn't Ford ask Dolores that during system check in season 1?
Yes, he did.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yes, is the short answer. And
Dolores.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think and I'll happily have input, perhaps, Axel, your thoughts on this one as well. I think what I would say is that we are, well, first of all, Bernard is right to question himself, because he was, let's not forget, he was made by Dolores. Yeah. Right, that's exactly what happened. He was created by her, and it just seems counterintuitive in a way. Why on earth is she creating somebody that she knows is going to oppose her? So he has to be second guessing himself. So I think that's the first thing, and then the second thing is, yes, we have to be second guessing the results of what he's been doing there. But Axel, have you got any thoughts on that one with all the sort of the tests?
Yeah, I thought it was really super interesting, and I find it to be super interesting to try to figure out. At the end of season 2, Dolores explains that the reason why she, I guess we'll call it, reconstituted Bernard here is because she needed a kind of yin to her yang, right? And I mean, watching season 2, I saw so many, as a person who studies Buddhism, I saw so many Buddhist analogies. They just come like at you so quickly in this show. And this was one of them. But then we find out coming into this that he's been blamed for everything.
Yeah.
Did Dolores do that? Was that her? Was she like, hey, I set you free, but as soon as you leave Arnold's house, no more, no take backs, and I'm going at you, and you're going to have to go with me. Like, it's all hands on deck. And she's like, I'm going to blame all of this on you through Hale. Right. And I'm going to make moves against you. So we had talked about before, maybe finding out what happened during those 3 months, which is interesting to me, because has this relationship, have they already begun battling? And was that a first strike? So that's why Bernard is worried. Oh, is she coming at me now? We also don't know if this button that he has is something that he programmed himself. Did he program his own Wyatt into himself, right? Or so he could turn angry and do the things that Ford said he couldn't do. Remember? That's why Ford shot him in the head. He said, you're not going to be able to do this, Bernard, right? Or did Dolores give him that as a kind of like a gift? Like she got Wyatt, she gave Teddy Wyatt. Here, I'll give you a little bit of a Wyatt too, Bernard.
Everyone gets a Wyatt.
Yeah, everybody gets a Wyatt, just like Oprah. Look under your seat. You're a Wyatt. But I think that has a lot of questions turning in my head.
Absolutely. And I agree completely. And I think that when we sort of say, what was Dolores up to during that gap, we had just as big a gap, it would appear, with Bernard. And, we're sort of, again, we've been kind of lulled into this. Oh, well, he sort of goes out there and then he obviously realizes he has to go on the run. That doesn't seem, there must be more to it than that. For 3 months, Bernard is not just sort of sitting there hiding away somewhere, just self-checking himself. He's talking about, I can stop her. I need to do this. He's not just there sitting at this abattoir just thinking, oh, if only I could stop Dolores. I hope she's not got too far in her evil plans. That's not it. There's something. He has been doing something, but we just do not know. What's your take on Bernard so far, Hax?
That's really interesting. Trying to imagine what he's doing in that time. But something that you said, Axel, that really caught my mind thinking is that we're assuming that Dolores leaves the park, and then we're seeing, her immediately rebuild Bernard, and then we're starting the storyline. But there is something really odd about the fact that she knows that Bernard needs to oppose her, right? With such confidence, she's like, yeah, we're not going to make it through this as friends, and he's kind of like, okay, well, thanks for rebuilding me. See ya. Like, I don't know, just something about the fact that we now have Rehoboam, which can tell the future, and she somehow knows that he needs to oppose her. I think may add evidence to simulation theory, but I don't know. And with that, it also kind of adds that we might see some of the actions, or maybe even seeing actions happen after Dolores gets out of the park before she then rebuilds Bernard. Which we might have already seen scenes. Yeah,
I think we definitely will.
Yeah.
It's like what that's so true is what she gives that speech, and then she says to the Hale bot, who we still don't know who that is, we've got work to do. They leave. Then Bernard gets up and he opens the door, and that's the end of season 2.
Yeah.
So what are the rules of engagement between them? We don't know anything about it. Was she waiting outside with a dart gun and then she got him? I told you, as soon as you leave, it's on. It's very, I think based upon the preview that you alluded to, Robert, I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see a little bit of what happened to bring us to this point. And maybe that'll also clue us into who's Hale, who's inside Martin, who are these other balls.
Yeah, I think so, and I think we'll talk about episode 2 in a moment. So I think we will. The Bernard, why did Dolores bring Bernard back thing has been hanging around for 2 years now.
Yeah,
it was, and the showrunners were asked about it at the end of season 2, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of Dolores realized that she couldn't do all of this on her own because of what happened at the end. That therefore she needed to have some sort of constructive sort of opposition from somebody, and he would be needed perhaps after she'd finished what she was going to be doing. So that was the kind of all they said. But again, it doesn't completely answer it, because if you think maybe she needs him afterwards, well, why didn't she just create him afterwards? Why does she have to do that now? So this has been, and I hope that they will come back to this. Otherwise, it is quite a sort of a motivations black hole.
I agree with you. It serves the thematic gist of the show more than it does the narrative at this point. And we need that to be filled in, because I understood it thematically. Oh, okay. She wants someone to push her, keep her in check so she doesn't. But then when it actually plays out, you're like, okay, what's really happening here? Because maybe there's more to it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go pick up on a quick comment in the chat, which I'd quite like to pick up on the links between Insight and Delos in a moment. So Bunny said, Serac is a mountain climbing term for a dangerous piece of a glacial ice that should be avoided, whereas a ford is a low spot in a river where the water can be crossed. So I'll just sort of leave that one hanging there as a thought. I thought it was quite interesting to think about. We did have a couple of questions, and maybe guys in a moment we'll pick up on that. We had a couple of questions and super chats I want to get to. So Shadow Dog Production, thank you so much for the super chat, saying, do you think Dolores can be in multiple bodies at once? Can she make a Pearl copy of herself and put that into a second body? We don't have enough information, so just curious what you think. I mean, I'll very quickly answer this one first, and then Hax, you've not spoken for a moment. Over, perhaps if you want to pick up on this one. I think you're right in saying we do not have the information on this. They haven't told us anything that says it can't be done. So theoretically, yeah, Dolores could just create, lots of versions of herself to go out and do it, and we could all be in a kind of being John Malkovich kind of world. But I don't think that is what has happened, simply because of sort of body language and all the rest of it. But Hax, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I think that I think it's definitely possible. I definitely think it's possible, but I think it's one of those things that if they abuse it, then it's going to be the most aggravating thing for us to watch. So I think that they are going to have to use it once as kind of like, the big twist of a season, and it may be, being happening now, like all of the pearls were just blank so that Dolores could clone herself 5 times and, have an army of herself, kind of thing. I don't think that's happening. But my point is that like this idea of 2 Maeves, it could work for a single reveal, but if the entire time we're having to consider everybody else forever, then I think it's going to be aggravating. So yeah, plausible, but has to be used carefully.
I think I'd agree with that. Shady of the Evening, thank you so much for the super chat, saying no new questions, just super thanks to Robert and Hax for all the great videos. You're very welcome. And chats, and hello, Axel. Can't wait for Maeve. Fantastic. So thank you so much for that. I said I was going to pick back up on this link between Delos and Insight. Now, we've sort of hinted at it a few times. What I'll do is I'll start with my throw out first guess or shape of what it is. At the risk of turning this into a Bible study, which I suggest we don't, the names of Rehoboam and Solomon are quite telling. Solomon being the last king of the United Kingdom, so to speak, and then Rehoboam being his son was then the ruler of one half of the divided kingdom. And Solomon was seen as being great and wise, and Rehoboam quite the opposite. Now, this is important because we have Rehoboam, but we saw from some of the pre-publicity that the first take on all of this, the first iteration of this sort of mega algorithm supercomputer, whatever it is, was called the Solomon build. Now, that was a long time ago, and then when we find out about it now, it's called Rehoboam. Now, if it's more than just this is a cool name, then are they trying to hint at everything was all together and then it got split down into 2? And when it was all together, maybe it had some kind of great or noble or wise ideas behind it. And now when it's split down, the 2 sides will be opposed to one another. It's actually a whole lot more evil and sinister. And there's also the making the gods angry kind of aspect that Dolores keeps on talking about, the new gods and all the rest of it. So that's my initial take, is that they are linked, these 2 companies. Perhaps they are linked by the data, but they have kind of come apart, and now it's slightly more antagonistic between them. Let's go to Axel first. What's your take either on that as a starting point, or where you think these 2 companies are?
I think that works really cool for the name. And I was looking into that as well. I think that there's definitely a history here, and maybe with Arnold, because if we remember, Arnold was really the tech person, right? And Ford was the story guy. And he wanted to create Westworld and all this. And it was Arnold that was going after the AI and the deeper tech stuff. So I think it's interesting if we maybe we'll get some flashbacks with that. I think it's really cool. Lost did this. I mean, Game of Thrones, a lot, The Wire, everything. You kind of stratify the story, and you find that you enter at one point and it gets higher and higher. And as it gets higher, right, you look down and you start to see all the connections. And if you can make those connections thematic, that's why I'm interested in meeting this Serac and seeing what kind of guy he is and what his ideas are about what even was going on in Westworld. I think we're definitely going to go down that road. And I'm really excited by it. I think it's really cool when these Insight videos first started coming out. I was kind of like, wow, this is a whole nother thing that's happening here. And I was really excited by it. And I think that we know so little about how Westworld started, the company that existed before Delos took them over, that Arnold and Ford, their relationship. So I think there's a whole lot that we can find here that may go all the way back to the beginning and have something to do with perhaps Dolores has met him before. Remember how
that would be cool, and it does come back to my fanboy hope that maybe we will get another Anthony Hopkins cameo.
God, yeah.
That would be amazing. Hax, what's your take on this? What the link between the two companies?
So a lot of good points there. I think that there's some kind of parallel between Ford's dynamic with Arnold and then the father of Liam and this mystery creator. I think that there's he is the Arnold equivalent. But we also do learn that Arnold comes or had a good life. He says it to Dolores when he is showing her his house, his home outside. He's like, I've been blessed with a good life. Kind of alluding to the fact that he came from money and had other projects that were successful or something along the lines. Is left for interpretation, but there's something interesting about, I don't know, just this dynamic between Ford and Arnold, and then this mystery Serac. When you were talking, my mind immediately was like, what if Serac isn't who we're told it is? What if it's Arnold? What if it's Arnold in this guy's body, far beyond, whenever, and then they turn Arnold into this villain, and I was like, no, back up, I need to stop. But yeah, I don't know. I think that the first episode shows us that there is an interest that Insight has, or specifically Serac has, with Delos, far beyond just being an investor as a means to buffer profit. I think that Serac knows through Rehoboam that they need to invest in this company, and then we have to decide why. Is it because he aligns with the fact that now Dolores is using it to her benefit and will usher in the end of humanity? Probably not. I don't think he would want that. He may, but assuming that he knows, then I guess it's on the table. But yeah, I think if he is just strictly a villain, then what we can say is that he is after the Immortality Project that failed, because we hear William at the end of episode 4 of season 2 say that another year or two had gone by and we would have gotten a long-term viable solution for James Delos, but he was just out of time. So yeah, I think that also aligns to this idea that Serac is after this data that only Dolores knows where is, and whichever thread to go down. I think there's some interesting stuff there.
No, yeah, absolutely, a lot of different threads there. Can I just throw one other thing out there while we're talking about Insight and Delos, there is a lot of imagery about the maze in this. Like, you might have thought the maze, we'd done with that in season 1. Turns out we haven't quite done with it. It appears again in season 2. And it appears again here. Now, I don't know how many of these you spotted, but even Rehoboam itself looks a bit like it. And then, I mean, I might be wrong, but I think that there was the symbol was on the wall of that underpass where Caleb met Dolores, and it was in a couple of other places as well. What's going on here? Is this? I mean, I don't know. Anyone got any idea? Basically, Axel, why don't we go to you? What do you think that this is calling on humans to wake up in some way?
Ooh, I like that. I think that's a great avenue that they're definitely exploring when they're setting up, as Hax talked about, Caleb's humdrum life and him being stuck in the system and the test scores that he has to get. And I think that Dolores is definitely going to play on that. If she wants any allies, perhaps it's not host versus human. It's those who have been treated like a host versus those who have treated them that way, right? More of a kind of power to the people angle that we kind of saw. We thought that Maeve, I thought at least that Maeve was going to get into, but she became obsessed with finding her daughter in season 2. I think that's a very interesting aspect. I mean, hey, I don't want to go back to the thing he's a host, but if the if the phone calls were with his friends was his fidelity test and he passed it, and then he ends up in a place where there's a maze on the wall and a symbol, maybe that could mean something. But I like better what you said, which is that it's the idea that how different really are the people in the outside world than the hosts were in Westworld. They're both of their lives are controlled by those with money, power, and influence, right? What was Westworld? It was full of rich people who wanted to kill and F things. What happens on the outside world? Pretty much the same thing. It's not like
in blockchain,
it's and what have we learned? No offense, Hax. The tech guys are not our friends, right? Zuckerberg is not trying to make our lives better. He's trying to make money. Okay. Facebook started out as a way for a bunch of dudes to rate young 18-year-old girls at college. It did not start out as a way to share photos with friends. So I think that that's an interesting idea that the maze is out here. And maybe it makes me think, and I'm just thinking of this spontaneously, maybe Rehoboam knows this. Maybe there's something in it. Maybe there's something in Sirach that's like Arnold, that it actually has a good purpose. Yeah. And it wants to free people. Who knows? Even though it's under this corporate guise, we could find that within Insight, there is a division, just as there was inside Westworld. Whereas Forge shut down Arnold wanting to bring it up. Was there also a parallel within Insight? Is there another person besides Sirach, right? Or was it Sirach and Gallagher? And Gallagher is the Ford, right? So that's kind of interesting.
Do you mean Dempsey Gallagher? I'm not sure who Gallagher is.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I get mixed up because the guy's damn name is John Gallagher, the guy who plays him.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
So
Dempsey, the father. Yes.
The parallels between Arnold and this mystery Sirach person are incredible. I don't know how, I'm just coming to this, but this conversation is incredible because they are so alike for so many reasons. And this idea that there is a parallel between early stages of a company, such as Arnold's and Ford's adventure together, and Liam Dempsey's father and this Sirach person, in which case Ford, leads to Arnold dying, it could very much be, in this case, it's Surak that leads to Liam Dempsey's father dying.
And how did he die?
Which we don't know, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, there's just, man, this idea that also, Robert, you said this, Rehoboam leading to humans consciousness, right? All of us think that we have free will. The show, I think, is making the opposite claim, that we are deterministic. Since like Arnold and Surak are so similar, Arnold could have been pushing towards host consciousness, and Surak could have seen the same thing, which we are not that far from, just basic programming and robots. We need to achieve free will, and this Rehoboam project could have been, his push or, insight, because the logo, everything is this maze. And if it's not for the hosts to find consciousness, then maybe it's for the humans to find consciousness. And I don't know. I think it's interesting.
I mean, I'm loving this conversation because I think, and somebody put in the chat, you don't just hang a maze on the wall for no reason. It is that, I mean, this is Chekhov's maze now. That it's there, and unless they're trying to just play with us, but I don't think so. Now, my playing devil's advocate with this is that Caleb, I agree. I hope he's a human, but they are framing him like he's a host in Westworld. And that's not just in sort of what Dolores is sort of saying to him. We got in some of the trailers, the visuals of him in a cage or all the rest of it. But, when you see him wake up, like we saw Dolores waking up and all the rest of it. He goes through his day, set in his loop and all the rest of it, as if he's just there like a host. So they are framing him as the example of humanity, as being like the hosts, their lives being managed by the big bad company, as it were. That is how they are framing him. Now, one of the things that we saw in the pre-season trailers, just as a sort of a throwaway 1 second in a trailer, was what looks like riots against Insight. And to my mind, this seems to be people saying, no, we want our free will. We don't want to be controlled all of this time. And I don't know at this stage, because we're not far enough into the plot yet, whether that is Dolores's big plan to incite violence, so to speak, incite rebellion. It's certainly an interesting use of that word, insight, or whether that's just humanity as a whole doing it. But I think that the link across to the maze is very clear. Someone at some point is trying to get humans to rebel against this determinism that is there.
Yeah,
that to me seems one of the arcs of season 3.
With that, to build on that, if Surak is this thing that's trying to gain free will for humanity, then it shapes this entire story way differently. Because we all think of evil corporations. The go-to is that they're collecting data. Like, we're just like, we've only been able to deduce how Rehoboam works, right? And I don't think that we're logically getting to this massive data collection wrong. I think that that's happening, but massive data collection now is such this bad thing. No one likes their data being their data being stored for whatever reason, privacy or otherwise. So the negative connotation of heavy corporations, comes with Surak being the bad guy of this. But what if he is trying to gain free will for humanity, and Dolores is trying to stop this because humans with free will are much harder to beat than humans without free will? So it's like,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And it does also play into something we were talking about last week. It was Yumi and Justin. And one of the issues I had, which we had a good chat around, was Maeve's motivations. Because we know what her motivations have been thus far, but what is her motivation in season 3? The only motivation we could kind of come up with that she seemed to have shown through the last couple of seasons, this desire for people to have their own free will, to be able to make their own choices. That didn't kind of make sense with what seems to be what they've been teasing anyway in the preseason trailers, is that this idea that, you know, Serac finds her and says, hey, Dolores is trying to kill me. And she goes, oh, in that case, I will happily do what you say and go and kill her. That it works a lot better if he says, I am trying to save humanity and give them free will, and she is trying to stop it. That suddenly all clicks into place.
If we just figured this out, I'm gonna lose my mind. This was so good.
Well, it does make sense, right? Because everything we have found, it's always bad news. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it would be interesting that they flip it.
Yep.
And that he is like the Arnold that succeeded, and he has an idea to help, even though it. But you could also see with what Robert said, Dolores using that idea of they're trying to control you against him, right? And kind of usurping that, or maybe even getting into the system and purposefully kind of maybe causing some of these little hiccups that are happening to mess with whatever data he has or whatever goal he's trying to achieve. I think that's actually vastly more interesting to me, because it makes you really kind of question. So far, we're watching episode 1 and we're cheering for Dolores in a way, right? I mean, I was like, all right, get that info, Dolores, get Rehoboam, you know? But then for her to kind of flip, we've been on such a journey with her.
Well, I think in any event, what we've got here is a situation. This isn't robots versus humans. That's not what's going on here. This might be where Dolores' initial idea was, but what we're not going to see in season 3 is this hosts versus humans battle royale. It's going to get a lot more complicated and murky than that, because we've got people coming in on both sides of it. Hax, did you have one more thing to say before I quickly give everyone a chance just to say what's coming up on their channels?
Yes, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, in that case, why don't I do this roughly halfway through my live streams, give my fine guests a chance to just let people know what's happening on their channels coming up. So Hax, as it's you, go and tell us what to look out for in the world of Hax Dogma.
Yeah, so each week we'll be breaking down an episode full length, super in detail about the episode, kind of what happened, our theories, basically anything we can possibly think of will happen, that we can theorize on, we'll do it. And, if it needs its own kind of separate video, we'll break it down, such as my last video for simulation within a simulation. I'll be on live streams pre-show with Robert here, and post-show with
Justin.
With Justin, yeah, thank you. With Justin, and you can find the links on any of my YouTube videos.
Yeah, so that channel is Top Shelf Fandom if you want to go and check that out. And as I always say, I only welcome people onto my show if I will personally recommend what they offer, and both of these fine gentlemen I definitely do. As Hax said, he's very happily agreed to come, and I'm delighted he's going to be coming on all the way through with these pre-shows, all the way through the season. So thank you for that, Hax. I really appreciate that. Axel, do you want to just, from your perspective, what's coming on in the world of Axel that people can be looking forward to?
All right. Well, I am in the podcasting world. I just like to jump on to camera every once in a while when these gentlemen invite me. You can check us out at dvrpodcast.com. You can subscribe to Daily DVR. We do all types of TV. I'm actually covering Better Call Saul with Ashaya from History of Westeros. We're doing all this season of Better Call Saul, finishing up Curb Your Enthusiasm. We cover The Bachelor, and of course, Westworld, 3 shows a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with 3 different crews. I'll be on actually the after show of Top Shelf Fandom next week with Justin and Hax. And I'm just going to be trying to put out as much content as I can, because we're all stuck inside. People need something to listen to, and I need something to do with myself.
Well, I mean, if people want something to do, then listening to your podcast is an excellent way of spending the time. It has to be said. As for this channel, I will, of course, be covering Westworld in full this week coming forward. These live streams, pre-show live streams, will be happening same time every week before the show. Just a chance to look back at what happened the previous episode, speculate a little bit about what might be happening in the episode to come. I'll do my breakdown of the episode within 24 hours of the of each episode airing. I'm going to do at least one other video a week as well, whether that's on a subject or a trailer breakdown if we get a trailer for the next episode, something like that. And through all of that, I am going to be also doing at least one video a week of the other things that I cover on this channel. If you're coming here for Westworld, fantastic to have you. I also cover predominantly Lord of the Rings, as well as Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire on this channel too, and some other things as we go through the year. So if you're interested in that, there's links everywhere on the channel. And I also say every single time, patrons, thank you. I cannot do this without your support. If you are interested in supporting the channel and supporting what I do, there's a link to my Patreon page down in the description. That's not just a place to support the channel, but also get access to some things I do exclusively for my patrons. Looks like we might have lost Axel for just one moment, but let's get back into
stretching the legs.
Oh, just scratching it. Fantastic. Well, thank you for sparing us the sight of your, I'm sure, delightful legs. Let's look forward a little bit to next week. Next episode in 3 hours or whatever it is, and let's break it down by character, shall we? So I think Hax, you said you'd not seen the preview. What they've done, just so everyone knows, is that previously they did like trailers for the next episode, short just preview trailers. This time they did do a sort of a short preview trailer, but they said in the coming weeks, so we don't know exactly when these different things are going to be happening, but we can obviously speculate. So let's start with Dolores. Now we'll go to Axel first on this one. So we've sort of talked around this a little bit more. What do you think is a little bit earlier? What do you think is going to be happening with Dolores this next episode? We left her there with Caleb. Do you think we're going to be picking up on her there? And what do you think is going to happen after that?
Well, let's see. If I remember from the trailer, it looks like we are going to get a little bit of her kind of introducing Halebot to whoever she is. It looks like we see Hale kind of looking in a mirror while Dolores is sitting there and kind of surprised at what she sees. I think that I think before we pick up with Caleb, we might first find out a little bit more information about what led us here and in those 3 months. I hope so. I think that's vitally important. I think it was a clue, the first thing that started off the season, as we all kind of agree, it seemed to have happened earlier. And I think, it's good to have all of these questions, but I would like to know sooner rather than later who is inside Hale, who is inside Martin, so I can get a grasp on these characters and connect to them in some way, and also get a little bit more, I hope, of what we talked about earlier. How is Dolores looking at Bernard? Is she going to talk about Bernard? Is she going to mention Bernard? Has she been trying to infiltrate his system in some way? But I think before we get her and Caleb, we're going to get some of that. But I suppose when we do get her and Caleb, we're going to see how they connect. And let's see, are we going to ship them? Are they going to fall in love? What's going to
ship them already?
Well, yeah. I think I have for about 6 months now. Hax, why don't we go to? Let's pick up first of all on the going back to what Dolores did first kind of idea. Now, for your benefit, for anyone who hasn't seen it, the trailer for the coming up. Had a few shots of Dolores and Charlotte Hale, and it seems to be just after she's been created, and Charlotte's character's going, "Who am I? what's going on, and then she's shown her picture and shown a mirror, and Dolores is there. Now I'm going to show you who you have to pretend to be. So we do at some point, and my best guess is probably this episode, but it might be episode 3 or something like that. We are going to see that initial culture shock for whichever host it is who is in Charlotte's body. So do you want to pick up on that? I mean, I'm sure we will, until we find out, we will speculate every week on who it is. But do you want to pick up, do you have any extra information now we've seen her to who it might be? And is there anything else you'd like to sort of get on that initial starting point? What might we be looking for there?
Yeah, I think I'm watching the trailer now. I have it pulled up, and it looks like
you're watching the trailer while doing this. This is a clever guy.
Yeah, this idea of Hale looking at herself in the mirror as she is just recreated. Man, I want to say Teddy. I want to say this is Teddy so bad, even though I know that he's in the Valley Beyond. It makes so much sense for so many reasons, but it really paints Dolores as this villain, in which, she kind of already holds that title for a few reasons. But yeah, it'd be really messed up, to put him in the Valley Beyond, but also use him here or use another version of him here. Other than that, I guess, it could be Angela. But I guess what I'm really excited for is that she's picking up this little red pearl, and we're finally going to know. I think episode 2 will probably be told. If we're having this scene in episode 2, I have to imagine that they're going to say who it is. But hopefully they say who it is. I'm not trying to be in episode 8 trying to figure it out. They're still getting the same question for the last 2 years about who this little red pearl is. But yeah, I'm happy to see that we'll likely see the time, because my impression is that looking at the scene is that it's before Bernard is printed. So again, there's time that happens when she gets off, and things that happen before she exists, which is really interesting. I don't know how she created her own body. Now that I'm thinking about this, but yeah, so there's some kind of timeline play that we'll see from the before, or the before Bernard is created in the present timeline. Yeah,
I mean, I think I agree. And in terms of Teddy, I mean, I've gone on record several times. I think this is Teddy. I'm not 100% sure, but it just kind of, it feels right based on the body language that we've had. And one thing that I think I said it in my video, but I think it comes across very strongly in that trailer, is that whoever this is, whichever host is in there, this is quite a lot more of a sensitive soul than someone like Angela or Dolores herself or something like that. This is somebody who's like, who has a culture shock, who has self-doubt, who needs to be reassured. And it's somebody that Dolores has some personal connection with. So for my money, Teddy's top of the list. I mean, I've seen somebody suggesting her dad, Peter Abernathy, again. That might make sense.
What's the strategy behind it? That's what right? Like you're saying, if it's her dad, that's sentimental, but then to send her dad to a board meeting after he's been talking about, did you paint that, Dolores?
Yeah. It's, to my mind, the thing that she would be looking for the most in deciding who to take out is loyalty, because that's who is it she's closest to, and that I think immediately gives us quite a limited pool of people. So I think Teddy is most likely, but I will we'll wait and see on that one a bit.
What's really interesting to me is that, like, Dolores was the one who read the book, and we just kind of have to infer that they have like a training, like a Rocky training montage of her just learning how to be Hale, assuming that this also isn't Dolores, right? Because she, again, is the only person who knows how to act like Charlotte Hale, as intimately as you would need to impersonate, someone. And assuming we're going to see her child at some point, I think, in one of the trailers it kind of showed. So I don't know. It is definitely possible that it's also Dolores, and it's kind of like she's coming to terms with herself being a subordinate to herself, and I don't know. Yeah.
I have to say that you were previously talking about Dolores being in simultaneous places at the same time. I am a big proponent of that. I think that there may be a point at which, remember, Dolores said that it comes back to last season. What is real? That which is irreplaceable is real. But couldn't you imagine Dolores? She is open to change. Let's not forget that. And her attitude and her philosophy could change. And she could say, humans are replaceable, but we're not. And what I once saw as a inadequacy, I now see as a strength.
Oh, snap.
And I can be in two places at once. I can be a computer in a system at the same time I'm in a body, at the same time I'm in another body. And then guess what? I'm in a car and a motor. I'm everywhere with Rehoboam. Like, she broadens the idea of what their quote unquote, not humanity, but consciousness is, right? That it doesn't have to be defined by the creator. And I think that's an important point, because I never bought that which is real is irreplaceable. It never, I don't think that that's really true. And I think that if you could be in different things, or the same way in which she said that she was going to destroy the cradle because she wanted the host not to have a copy, because then it makes everything final.
Yeah.
That seems more of the Wyatt Dolores before she capped Teddy, rather than after, where after getting capped by Bernard, she actually is the one who uploads all the hosts to the cloud, right? She's the one who pushes the button and saves everyone in the forge.
Yeah.
So she's capable of change. So I think that that's a cool idea, that she can be in multiple places at once. I think it's possible. Other sci-fi places have done it. But Robert, I like what you said, which is that trust factor. And then it's Angela, her dad. Who else? Teddy. But besides those three, who else does she really trust? Could it be someone from the past that we don't know about, that she had a connection to at the park?
Watch it be old Bill. It's old Bill.
Yeah. It's interesting. But then when you make it 4, you're like, wow, who's it going to be then? You know, I mean, now let me ask you this, guys, just so we're assuming that those pearls are hosts who have somewhat either gained consciousness or were close to it at the park. From reading the book, there is also the possibility, can she create more pearls? Have we all decided on this yet? Could she take what she read in one of those books and put it on a pearl, not just create a body that looks like someone?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Westworld, all things are possible. So yes, I think is the short answer. But after season 2, again, the showrunners, they did a lot of talking about what was going on, just to clarify what was happening.
Okay.
And they did say, yes, these are 5 hosts that she's taken out.
Okay.
So I think we have to take them at their word for the time being, that was what I mean. That was 2 years ago. Maybe they changed their mind, but that was certainly the idea, was that she'd taken a gang with her. Here's her posse that she was taking out into the real world. That was the idea behind it. We had a couple of quick super chats I want to pick up on. Louise Brooks, thank you so much, saying Dolores was still in Hale at the board meeting, maybe, ? I mean, my take to that, I mean, I did quite like Sarah Owen said, if you had a clone, would you spoon yourself? I mean, I think
Definitely.
I think the answer is probably no, although perhaps if it was the old Dolores, whereas the Dolores we've got now is Dolores / Wyatt, I don't know. We're getting into slightly weird zones there. But Dolores being in Hale at the board meeting, I think no. Because again, it's a body language thing, and this is quite just a personal take. But she she seemed to, and I think this is the actress Tessa Thompson doing a good job. She seemed quite taking a lot of masculine poses, sort of leaning back and sort of trying to be big, and in a way that the original Charlotte Hale didn't really. So my take is that helped underline the idea for me that it was Teddy. But did anyone think that perhaps this was Dolores there?
I definitely think it's possible. One of the post-season interviews that Dolores gave, or that Evan Rachel Wood gave, showed that one of the things that she did acting-wise to kind of subtly let the audience know that she was in Hale's body was every time she would sit down, she would put her right hand on top of her left hand, and she did that every single time. Or maybe it was the opposite. So I'll have to find the video, but it's throughout season 1, she sits the exact same way, and this was just something she decided to do. And we'll have like left on right, her hands neatly positioned, and then when she switched bodies, she switched it to kind of let the audience know, hey, right hand on left. That's when that's when I am Dolores inside of Hale. Yeah, I've been meaning to go back and look. I don't think we ever see her hands in the interview.
I thought you were leading to something massive there, and I thought, this is her telling us secretly.
She grew up in stage acting. Her dad is a director, an actor in North Carolina, and that's the kind of act. That's beautiful stuff, man. That is great. Good for her.
Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I throw something at you? This is from Shade of the Evening, a super chat. Thank you so much. Saying y'all, and I can never pronounce y'all, so apologies. Do you all think that the little boy that we see in the trailer is Hale's son? Now, this is something that it's in that trailer, Hax, that you've been watching while we've been chatting. There is a very small shot of a young boy who's lying down in bed holding something. Now, I, in my trailer breakdown, in a throwaway way, said, and here's a shot of Arnold's son. But I've heard around people saying, oh, this is Hale's son. Do either of you know if we've actually got confirmation on who this is? And if we have, or if we haven't, why would there be this character there? Let's go Axel first. I'm going to assume, Hax, you're still watching the video. So,
no, I don't have confirmation on it. If Hale, I have not heard that Hale has a son. I have always felt that there was something suspicious about her being so young and being on the board of what is like a huge company. I think that would be interesting if we found out that, but also, like you said, anything is possible in Westworld, and with such a fleeting image, who knows what it could be. I guess I don't have enough to even kind of theorize on it, but
so in one of the other trailers, we see an image of Charlotte Hale going to pick up a small child from a park. And I think it gives the impression that it's very much like a motherly thing, like she has a dog and like going to pick up the kid after work kind of thing. Very much, I get that vibe from it. Looking at this child laying on the bed, I'm having a hard time remembering what Charlie looked like, Arnold's son, and if that is this same child. I don't know. I don't think that we would see Arnold's kid ever again. Outside of like some relation to Bernard, in the sense of his cornerstone or something like that, maybe. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one, and I think that I hadn't clocked that image you were saying about Charlotte going and picking up a child from the play area. Perhaps then we have this. The characters that they're imitating have got real lives. Now, this is perhaps what they're going to go to. Is so Charlotte Hale, yes, you can kill Charlotte Hale. You can put a host in a Charlotte Hale body, and you can teach this person how she behaves and all the rest of it. But she's got a family. She'll have a social life when she's not doing. I don't know how much of a social life she'll have. Looks quite career driven to me. But there are things outside of Delos that she will need to interact with, and perhaps this is one of those things, is that actually she has got a child. So I don't know. Maybe that's where we're going with it.
I'm actually, to jump in real fast, I am looking at this picture though, and his blanket is arrows. And I only bring this up is because the new opening credits, it's like arrows that turn into the lines on the Rehoboam layout. So I don't know why that means anything, but it is definitely the same exact image.
I do want to just chime in here. Something that I've always thought is I've never 100% believed that the cornerstone of, remember, it's Bernard's cornerstone that the kid died, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know that actually happened.
I mean, well, that's why Arnold killed himself.
Yeah, that's the sort of the background.
That's the line is like, I just want to see my boy again.
But I'm just saying, like Robert said, it's Westworld. You know, like we don't know that his son is dead.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying. We don't have to examine it completely.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it just brings up the idea of how little we actually know about Arnold and Bernard, the difference between them, and how little we know about Arnold. Now, I know that it was the loss of his son and then having Dolores, that's the story that Ford has told us, and that's the story we've seen so far. But when you say loss, it could mean death. It could mean the mom took him away and he created this as a reason to not want to leave the park. There's nothing to return to for him, you know? In Bernard's case, just a little crazy theory, not saying I believe it, but I question all of that kind of the past that we've been shown and has been told by Ford, because Ford, he says what he needs to say in order to get things to happen.
Yeah. One thing I do.
Go ahead.
One thing I do want to bring up in terms of like blast from the past or questioning his origin story is that we know that he was married and she is still alive. Yeah, we've never heard that she was dead. We've just heard that they got divorced because he put all his time into his work and kind of just used that escapism to deal with the death of his child. So I would really like to see in some kind of way him get recognized in the real world. Or maybe like now that the entire world is blaming Bernard Lowe for the death of these people, his face is everywhere. Just imagine the ex-wife coming back and being like, "Hey, I thought you were dead. What just happened?"
Yeah, there's a lot of that actually when you start digging into it. The amount of it's like with Dolores as well. People will have the people she's been mixing with. Some people will remember her for who she is and all the rest of it. Yeah. There's I think Bernard is a perfect example of that as well, because he was Arnold before. There are lots of we think that they're there incognito. They are 99% incognito. There will be people who recognize them. But can I take us to Maeve? Now we talked a bit about Maeve earlier, but let's go with Maeve in episode 2. Now I think we've got a reasonable assumption that we are going to have a reasonable amount of Maeve in this episode. The episode is called, and this is one of the few episodes of Westworld that I know I can pronounce correctly, it's called The Winter Line. Now, the Winter Line was a series of fortifications in the Second World Wars, of German, Italian fortifications that went across, I think, Italy. Mm. And that seems to play into where Maeve seems to be in some sort of German-occupied Europe during the Second World War. It's kind of, I'm guessing the world there is some kind of resistance fighter kind of world. Now, if we're assuming that we're going to pick up on Maeve, and we had this very brief bit with her there, what do you think's going to happen? Let's Hax, let's go to you on this one first. So she wakes up, she realizes seems quite confused. Hey, I've just tied up and punched a Nazi. How very Indiana Jones. What then?
Okay, so I'm working with the assumption that she is still very much conscious. She's the Maeve that we know and love. I think that she would probably read the room pretty well and realize that she is once again in this scenario, or in someone else's world. I think that, watching this trailer, I do see that she freezes everybody and walks freely. I get the impression that happens later. Like, I think she has to 100% realize her situation and know that she can't just fold her cards without like having or reveal her cards without having a conversation with Felix or Sylvester, to kind of gauge where they're at. We do know that Hector is in this same world with her, so that'll be nice to see. It'll be interesting if he is the same Hector or if she will then have to awaken him, which I don't know. We've seen a lot of awakened journeys, and it seems like a lot of Maeve's storyline thus far with Shogun World and stuff is like a very slow paced, maybe padding to what her story could be. So I would hate to see her have to like stay here and then continually just keep awaking, making sure every host in the park is alive before they leave. But I don't know. That may happen. But yeah, I think so. She'll play it cool. She'll try to get in touch with Felix or Sylvester, try to talk to Hector, and then I don't know.
What do you think, Axel? What do you think she's going to do? After she's just like woken up and realized where she is.
Well, I like the fact that we see everybody frozen and it's that same situation, because it does clue us into her fully waking up, right? Like we're not gonna have to go through several episodes where she remembers the daughter and has a flash, right? Yeah. She knows who she is. She's woken up. I kind of like the idea that, right, Felix and Sylvester were kind of watching over her. Maybe they introduced her back in, because don't forget that also the word was out that she could control other hosts. That's why they saved her when she was rushed back in to the Mesa. And that was man, his name, the writer is slipping my mind. The English writer who was competing with Ford to write the storylines.
Lee Sizemore.
Oh, Lee Sizemore, yeah.
Right. Sizemore said she can wake up other hosts. That's my English accent, right? Other hosts.
It's perfect.
Yeah. It's beautiful. People love when you do that. So the word was kind of out. Now she eventually healed herself, right? Because Bernard came and gave that package from Ford to her, and that what was in that package, it helped her wake up. But did he give her further information to getting out of the park? That's what I think is interesting, because when I went back and rewatched, he said, just come to the window, Bernard, right? And he came to the window, and then, oh, she's got it. You can leave now. And then she started healing herself and kind of so was she in a self-isolation mode to protect herself, waiting until a signal came or Bernard came or something? I still think, hey, we've gone a long time without saying it. We're an hour and 28 minutes. Ford is still in the system, people. Okay? He's never going to go away.
He cannot die.
He'll be in Maeve.
He is Maeve.
He could have jumped into Maeve in that package. So what
he could have done. I mean, and I think yet again, another opportunity. Come on, Westworld writers, another opportunity for Anthony Hopkins.
But at least it's plan. Do you know what I mean? That's all. At least we could agree on that, right? He may have given her an out of the park, or an easier way to take control of things that didn't involve a complete host revolt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, my take at the end of season 2, my take was that Maeve was going to stay in the parks, and then she was going to try and like awaken all the hosts, because Dolores is gone and Bernard had gone out, and so this was what she was now going to do, was that she was going to create the new host nation. Dolores was just there with just a few of her friends in the outside world, but actually the hard work was going to be done by Maeve. Now, I don't know whether, 2 years later, I don't know whether that is exactly what she's going to be doing. I think that she will, clearly from what we've seen, she will go and try and find Hector. So this is her again, just trying to get her gang back together. The bit that's missing, we didn't get huge amounts from her in the trailers, is between that and her suddenly appearing there with Serac. So what we do not know what, again, this comes down to motivations. We don't know what she's going to do. Clearly going to find her lover makes sense. She gets him. She seems to go in a car, get out of whatever, problems they've got. But then what? He doesn't seem to be there later on in all of these times when she's sort of meeting Serac and the rest of it. Does she leave him in there to sort of do some work? I don't know. So that's the bit that really fascinates me, and I'm hoping that we progress far enough in Maeve's story in this episode that we actually get some idea about what she wants. Yeah. Because otherwise it's just she's trying to find the old gang, and like she'll go out and find where's Felix and Sylvester. I mean, I think, and I said this last week, but I think it is really important. She, when I was doing my rewatch of season 2, she had a really, I think it was an important moment when she saw what Lee Sizemore did in sacrificing himself, and they lingered on her face for a few seconds to show that this had an impact on her, that a human would sacrifice themselves in order to help her do what she needed to do. That was very important. So I think that whereas we're kind of speculating whether or not Dolores might get changed by meeting Caleb and realizing what humans are like, I think that Maeve has already gone through that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that she now realizes that actually there are some good humans there.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say it was sort of hinted at with the kind of like the Felix thing that, you don't make a very good human kind of thing, that she kind of understood that there's, perhaps some humans might be better than others. But I think it was that moment with Lee Sizemore, who went through quite a journey himself in season 2, that she actually realized that humans could be good. Sorry, go ahead, Axel, was it?
I think that's a great point. And I think that that's a big difference between her and Dolores, right? There is one person we're forgetting about who Maeve has on her side, which is the lesser Hemsworth, Stubbs. Stubbs is there too.
The lesser Hemsworth.
That's what we call him. The lesser Hemsworth, right? He's there. He obviously made his presence known to Dolores Halebot as she was leaving and getting on the boat. That scene, when I watched season 2, I was like, I did not realize that he talks for like 1 minute and 30 seconds. It's like the most dialogue he has in 2 seasons, where he's like, we both know Ford. Ford hired me. I was one of the first people. I'm a host. So it's interesting to see whether Maeve will connect with him. He could be a help to her, not just Felix and Sylvester, because Stubbs is the head of security for Westworld.
Yeah, and I think that makes so much sense, because I feel like Ford's original plan was to get Maeve out of the park, use Dolores as a distraction. I don't know if Ford ever really wanted Dolores out of the park.
That wasn't. It was Maeve's story.
It's very much gives this impression that you kill the board of directors, magician's trick, you make everyone look over here, and then someone's already out in the world and you've no way to track them. So this idea that Stubbs, Bernard, the people that actually aligned with Ford are then going against Ford's loose abomination out in the world also kind of seems interesting to think about it in that sense.
I just noticed something.
Yeah.
It was Maeve's plan to get out. What was she supposed to do? Maybe she was supposed to meet with Serac. And that's why we see her there. Maybe she completes what she was originally supposed to do when she left the park. And she was supposed to have Wasn't she trying to get no, that was the information of where her kid was, but was she leaving also with a copy of the forge?
No. Peter Abernathy, you're thinking of.
Right. Abernathy had it. Okay. But I remember she was carrying something with her. I didn't know Ford had instructed her to take something with her, but it does, to go back to what I originally said, what was the original plan that Ford had? It was a story of escape, Maeve. And she didn't. So does she follow through with it now?
I mean, this is an excellent question. I think as clearly Ford wanted her to escape, and so in season 1, the whole thing is, at what point does she actually gain this kind of like sentience, this self-awareness, and again, from the showrunners, they seem to say the first moment that she actually had made the decision for herself was when she got off the train. Yeah. Until that point, that was all her programming and Ford manipulating and all the rest of it. And yes, this was making use of her and her natural interest in things and all the rest of it. But it was only at that point that she did actually sort of break free from her programming and decide things for herself. Stubbs, I think, is interesting. It's worth it. I've got a super chat I want to come to just one second. But Stubbs, in that scene at the end of season 2, first of all, it's worth noting he was the one who and he knew who Dolores was as Charlotte Hale. He was the one who let her out. So, and he was saying, yeah, she's fine, let her through. You don't need to check her or anything like that. So he is very much on the side of the hosts here. And he says, when she's saying, well, what are you going to do? He says, I was hired to protect the hosts in Westworld and in the parks. I guess that's what I'm going to do. So I think that is going to now be his aim in season 2, which obviously brings us to Bernard, because Bernard is going back in. Let's talk about Bernard in just one second in terms of him going in, because we've got a question from Donald Peoples. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Talking about how they come back out again. Because the question is, Dolores knew it was impossible to escape as themselves. So she had to hide, pretend to be someone else. How do Maeve and Bernard escape after he's got back in? Or does Serac have that kind of pull to just get them out? So do you think that this is Maeve herself deciding to come out, or do you think that Serac kind of plucks her out?
Could be.
Yeah. Not enough information I want to go with. Yeah, I mean, it could be either one of those. I have no reason to disprove either, but it would be interesting to see Serac's involvement so early. Like, I feel like, man, I don't know. It could be either. Yeah, because like part of me really likes this idea of him knowing so much about Maeve and just plucking her out of the park for his his plan, and however he goes about convincing her to do what he wants her to do. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, if you think that Rehoboam is monitoring the whole world, do the people in Westworld still have their implants turned on? Is he able to also monitor what's happening in Westworld? And that is a question that would then aid us into answering your question, whether or not he would have the capability to manipulate things to allow Maeve to walk out, a host that everybody knows is a host, to walk out of the park. Now we know that she can, because she doesn't have the bomb in her neck, right? Mm-hmm. So she has that capability, and so does Hector, because Hector was rebuilt without the bomb in his neck. So I think that's an interesting idea, that it's like a jailbreak. I'd like to see that.
Good show.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the answer is we do not know. I like this idea that Serac just grabs her and takes her out as a kind of a show of power in this world now.
Yeah.
And she will then be like, I'm sure she won't be discombobulated by it, or she'll be very poisoned, all the rest of it. But it'll be, okay, so who are you? Why am I here? What's going on? That, I think, is the kind of the vibe that we're looking at, rather than her going out and stumbling across him in some way. I think he knows what she can do, and he knows that she's the person who can stop Dolores, and that's why he's proactively trying to find her. But let's rewind just one moment, and we'll talk about Bernard. Now, so we talked about what happened last episode, and he ended it going back, getting on a boat to go back to the island with all the parks, and he's there. From the trailer seems to imply that he has a little wander around the Westworld set for a bit, and he meets up with Stubbs and says, "Yeah, we need to go find Maeve." What do you think? I mean, how far do you think, Axel? Let's go with you on this one. How far do you think we're going to advance on that? Because that seems very kind of like, this is just him doing these things. Do you think he will find her? Do you think he's going to have to go searching for her? Or is it just a matter of, oh yeah, she's just there, let's go and get her?
Yeah, I have a feeling that it may be pretty rapid because we need to get to the events that are happening in the outside world. I think that we've moved past, after getting so into the park in season 1 and then season 2 being about this big revolt and it's destroyed. You'd think that also the park would be in a state of disrepair. Maybe they're building it back up. There's, security isn't as good. They might even be having trouble finding people to work there, right? Who might be scared to work there because of what happened or be around the hosts. So that provides them cover and opportunity. I would suppose that it would be pretty rapid, as you're describing, that he's able to meet up with him. I just want to know how Bernard's going to be able to move there, because everybody knows who he is there, what kind of cover does he have? Does he come and change his body? Does he put his Pearl in a new body for a little bit so he can hang out in Westworld? We haven't really seen that. That's another thing I was thinking when you're saying, could Dolores be Hale and Dolores? I mean, I think we're, based from the trailers, no, but it is possible that she could just, the machine sucks it out, the machine puts it into another, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
It's it's really interesting to consider, Bernard and Maeve at this time period. So I think someone said in chat, about knowing who knowing who Maeve was. And equally, I think before we mentioned this with knowing that she has that superpower, essentially, or access to the mesh network. We don't really know who knows that anymore. And we don't really know who knows Bernard anymore, because a lot of the humans have died. I'm having trouble thinking of a single person that's not Stubbs that would know who Bernard is. I'm sorry, actually, scratch that entirely. He's all over the internet, right? They're saying that he blew up the park. So, okay, never mind.
And that's why I point towards the fear. Yeah. Like people are saying in the chat, the rest of the parks are open. Yeah, that's true. But if one part of Disney World had a host revolt, guess what? It wouldn't be like, oh, okay, I'll just go to Epcot. No, you probably just wouldn't go to Disney World. You're not people are gonna be scared. And especially in a society where people have implants and all this, there must be a fear of AI. There must be a fear of hosts at some point, right? So that's
yeah. And I think what seems to have happened, we haven't seen everything in this, but what seems to have happened is that the message management is that they said he went on a rampage. Now, I don't think that they're suggesting that he literally just got out a gun and shot lots of people. Maybe they say he did a bit. I don't think that they can hide, given the fact that some people did escape. I don't think they can hide the fact that the hosts malfunctioned, but it seems as if the story they're trying to say is this disgruntled employee, tweaked the programming on those hosts, and that's, and then went on a rampage with all the hosts as a backup. That seems to be what the story they seem to be telling is, which means that they probably did have to shut all of the parks. But as we say, if it's right that on this war world that it is, they're just sort of running things without having any guests yet, that things that they haven't stopped stuff, they're ready to reopen and get people back in. They just won't reopen Westworld. I think that is the kind of the hint that we've got going on there. Shade of the Evening, thank you so much for the super chat, saying thoughts on Maeve doing what Sarek wants, bribery, question mark. I think not. I think we did talk about this one a little bit earlier on. I think our current best idea is that if she does do what he wants, it's because it aligns with her motivations, and it's much more likely that it's because she thinks or has been told that Dolores is trying to prevent free will in some way. That's our best guess right now. Whether that's true, whether she's being lied to, we don't know yet, but that seems to be our best guess so far. Guys, we've got about 10 more minutes to go, so now is the time to drop any more questions in the chat. But there is one person we've not mentioned yet because he didn't appear in episode 1. He does appear a little bit in the trailer, the sort of in the coming weeks trailer. The man in black, William, seems to be the man in white in this. He seems to be wearing white a lot. Do you think, let's go to you, Hax, first on this one. Do you think that we are going to see him in this episode? And if so, what's going on?
I think we see him at the end of the episode as like a look forward to this next episode kind of thing. I hope that they devote enough time to, Maeve and Bernard and Stubbs, kind of that dynamic in the park, and deal with William later on. I like the idea that at the end of this episode we see what we see in the trailer, whereas like William is kind of like in a prison perhaps, or some kind of mental health facility, because we know again that a lot of things from his crusade kind of point to him being this broken man looking to just end it all because of his wife passing, his daughter abandoning him, his project failing, this idea that he would become James Delos one day himself, haunting him, that he was just forget it, I'm ending it all here. So I think that this either speaks to him needing this mental health and to be locked up. I originally believed that it was locked up for his involvement in what happened to the park, but now that we know that they're scapegoating Bernard, I don't really know why he would be in this state if it wasn't mental health related. And that's all assuming that it is a prison. But yeah, I think that William is not in a good spot. There's also another trailer that we see him like destroying his own house because he's a millionaire, and millionaires love doing that for some reason in every show. Excuse me. And I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see him outside of the park after he heals, and however he gets there, I'm really curious about.
Yeah, agreed. Axel, have you got anything to add to that? Do you think we will see him this time?
Well, we had a hint at the board meeting where that robot was seemingly voting for him. Mm-hmm. Is that what you guys surmised as well?
That's what I thought.
That was my take, yeah.
Okay. So that means, and they said he was not able to be present. We last saw him where he was the high value person who they found, right? And they were wheeling him out he was on the stretcher on the beach. So I'm correct about that, mm-hmm. as Hale was leaving. So I think it makes total sense that Dolores or Hale, perhaps it's not publicly known, but that she may have told the other board members he was involved with it. Exactly for the reason you're saying. His wife died, blah, blah, blah. But if the public finds out, that means we're at fault. He's the CEO, right? So he's basically been, as we see in that flash forward where he's doing his fidelity test with his daughter, a robot daughter, and he seems to be a host. He is now perhaps in the same position that Delos is, whether it's a mental hospital, maybe it's a Delos type prison. Maybe he's in the California facility. Right? And he's become Delos, right? Because what happens to the bad guys? They become what they despise. And now he's forever going through these routines. And when we see him like destroying his house or whatever, maybe this is all in his mind or something. I think that if there's any storyline where they're going to mess with us, this is the one, I think, going through this season based upon what we saw at the end of last season.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. That, I mean, he clearly seems to. I mean, he's obviously going to be at a low. He's just shot his own daughter. His wife committed suicide when she realized who he really was. His whole life's work's come crashing down. Everything is going to be putting him in a bad place. So I think the fact that he can't be there to vote could be either that he's just excused himself and is just going off, in a bad place. So I think Sasak, I think in the chat was saying he's the man in Bath, not the Man in Black. He's there. He's recreating his wife's suicide. He sees himself in a mirror and he shoots the mirror. He hates himself that much. So there's either that or he is in some kind of mental hospital and therefore cannot be there. He still owns all the shares or whatever it is, but he can't actively vote at that time. So they've agreed that the machine should be able to vote on his behalf. So yeah, I think we might see him this episode, or they might, as I say, they might wait until episode 3. But yes, once you've got somebody who is locked up in some way because they're going through some sort of mental imbalance, that does open up possibilities that what we're seeing is not exactly what's happening.
Yep.
Louise Brooks, thank you so much for the super chat, saying Future World movie was about replacing world leaders with bots. May weave into the story as a nod to the source material. Yeah, that's very true. Pardon me, what we had a bit, I think, in season 2 was that kind of idea of sort of like replacing the influential people with host versions of themselves. That was a bit of the hint towards the sort of the Delos big plan of just having host versions of everyone. The twist, I think, which takes it more into a season 3 thing, is this idea that Rehoboam is running the world. And if Rehoboam is running the world, then yes, they could effectively be putting people in these positions of power. But the way we've been told that it is, actually they can be human, because humans are a lot simpler than hosts, and humans can be manipulated and moved and influenced because they've signed up to effectively to Insight's big program. Okay, guys, I think we're starting to run towards the end, but so I'm going to come to a final thought from both of you, either sort of a question that you've spotted in the chat or something that you've been burning to be saying all this time. Axel, let's come to you first. Is there anything sort of to wrap up that you'd like to sort of contribute?
I mean, not really. I want to give a shout out to Marshawn Lynch. He should have been eating Skittles on the show, but what can you do? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Robert. He's a football player, NFL. I should say
I've heard of him quite recently. Yes. I think you'll find he's an American football player rather than a football player.
You are right. Lena Waite too. She was in there. I mean, not really. I mean, I think we covered so much stuff. I just want to emphasize. One thing I did want to say is you had mentioned that we see Caleb and his buddy, who I think is, what's his name? Kid Cudi, right?
Cudi, yeah.
Pronounce it. Back in the day, I thought we called him Kid Cutie, but maybe he changed that. It's just people making fun of him. You know how them streets is. But I think that it seemed like they may have been both soldiers and maybe also kind of like covert operations guys, something to do with the government. One thing we didn't talk about is how Westworld seems to be off the coast of China. Maybe they have some kind of arrangement with the Chinese government. Perhaps Rehoboam has some kind of arrangement with the United States government. If you're going to be talking about politicians and, world, we bring it up another level. That's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about. But generally speaking, this has just been a wonderful chat. And I don't know. That's all I had to say is maybe we'll see world governments enter into this.
Be pretty interesting, yeah.
Yeah. Hax, how about you? Any final thoughts on this?
Final thoughts. I did see a little quote in chat about has anyone mentioned Emily being in Hale's body? Same kind of sassy attitude. I think that would be pretty wild. You know, we don't know that Dolores is aware of who William's child is, other than the fact that you know, it's possible, like, should they visit the park tons of times, like she even knows the Akishita's language, you know, so it's very possible that they haven't had an interaction. And using Emily, that because she knows that she's dead. William said that he just killed his son, and you know, that would be an interesting take. I don't think there's much evidence other than it would be interesting and not really, you know, well thought of yet. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. The other thing that I wanted to say is I'm 100% making a video on the dichotomy between Surak and Arnold and this like push to get human consciousness kind of thing. So that's all I keep thinking about now. Till I can make that. Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, just in terms of Dolores did know who Emily was, I think, because in season 2, she and William have a conversation about how they're similar. She says, "Yeah, you." He says, "I shot my daughter," and she said, "Yeah, I saw her down the track," or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about how they're alike or not alike, as the case may be. But that sounds like a fantastic video to be looking forward to, Hax. Guys, do you want to very quickly also just remind people where they can find you on the internet? Hax, where can people find you on the internet?
Hey, everybody. You can find me at Hax Dogma on YouTube. There'll be links posted in chat here shortly, I'm sure. And Twitter, same handle. Any of my videos, you can join the Discord. There'll be a link in those videos as well. And yeah, you can just hop in. We can have a chat about Westworld anytime anybody wants.
Excellent. And you, Axel?
All right. Well, thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you, you two handsome gentlemen. Everybody stay safe out there. You can find out more about me at dvrpodcast.com. We got a daily DVR Facebook group. And I guess Zuckerberg ain't that bad. And that's it. Yeah, 3 shows a week. Westworld Theory Cast, baby. And I can't wait to just keep on watching both of your videos because, you know, I was a video. It's so funny. I'm the guy who doesn't do this, and I was a professional video editor for 20 years. And the thought of sitting there and grabbing all these clips and then talking over them and getting it to work gives me a freaking headache just thinking about the amount of work. So you guys, you do great work. I love what you do. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. The honor is all mine. As always, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have both of you on.
Oh, yeah.
I will make you disappear for just 1 second because if you're watching this not live and a little bit later, then you will very soon be appearing somewhere. I always get this the wrong way around. Somewhere around here will be a link to other live streams that I've done. If you're in, or in fact, actually, I'll probably make that one. That's going to be a link. Around there is going to be a link to my Westworld Season 3 video. So if you want more stuff on Westworld Season 3, please check that out. Somewhere around here will be appearing a link to my Patreon page. So if you're interested in either supporting the channel or getting access to some of the stuff I do just for my patrons, please check that one out somewhere around here. Okay, guys, thank you so much again. Thank you, the chat. I really enjoyed this. Everyone enjoyed the episode. Stay safe, stay home, wash your hands lots. Take care, everyone, and I will see you on the other side.
Bye, guys.